Dracula. You've seen the movies. You know the cape, the fangs, the accent. But that is just the costume. To stay immortal, he had to evolve. If you look at the last 100 years of cinema, you aren't just seeing a vampire change his clothes, you are watching the evolution of a seduction. We are going to look past the fake rubber bats and the bad accents to focus on what audiences actually loved: the tragedy, the action, and the charm. This is Zara Bloom, and today we are conducting a forensic analysis on the most adapted creature in fiction. Let's uncover the illegal origins of the film that was sentenced to extinction by a judge. Then, we'll step onto the set of the secret ghost crew that filmed a masterpiece while Hollywood slept. And finally, we will discover the theological twist that gave the monster a soul. Welcome to the autopsy of the immortal. Part 1, the illegal resurrection. To understand the monster, you have to understand that his birth wasn't a premiere. It was a felony. The year is 1922. The place is Berlin. The studio is Prana Film. They wanted to adapt Bram Stoker's Dracula, but they had a huge problem. They didn't own the rights, so they decided to steal it. They changed Count Dracula to Count Orlok. They moved the setting from London to Germany. They thought if they just changed the names, no one would notice. They were wrong. Florence Stoker, the widow of the author, launched a legal crusade that would make modern copyright lawyers look gentle. She didn't want money. She wanted the film erased from existence. In 1925, she won. The German court issued a verdict of total erasure for the movie. The order was absolute. Every negative and every print was to be burned. Think about that for a second. The film that defined horror cinema, Nosferatu, was legally condemned to oblivion. It only exists today because a few rebellious film collectors hid prints in their basements in Paris and the US, smuggling the monster to safety while the fires burned in Berlin. And look at the monster they tried to kill. Max Schreck's Count Orlok isn't the sexy vampire we know today. He is a walking disease. He has rat teeth in the front of his mouth. He has pointed, bat-like ears. In 1922, the vampire wasn't a seducer. He was the plague that came home. Part 2, the ghost crew. Fast forward to 1931. The vampire has survived the fire, and now he is coming to Hollywood. This is the era of Bela Lugosi. We all know the image: the tuxedo, the cape, the medallion, the slow, hypnotic stare. But there is a massive misunderstanding about Lugosi that we need to clear up right now. You will often hear trivia that claims Lugosi didn't speak English and learned his lines phonetically, like a parrot. That is a disservice to the actor. While it is true he struggled with the language when he first arrived in America years earlier, by 1931, Lugosi had been playing Dracula on Broadway for 3 years. He knew exactly what he was saying. That strange, halting cadence, the way he pauses in the middle of sentences, that wasn't a language barrier. That was a choice. He was creating a rhythm of hypnosis. He was separating the monster from the humans by breaking the flow of time itself. But while Lugosi was filming during the day, there was a secret scandal happening on the exact same set at night. Universal Studios wanted to double their profits by releasing a Spanish-language version for foreign markets, but they didn't want to build new sets. So, they hired a second crew, a ghost crew, to film at night. The American crew would wrap for the day, and the Spanish crew would come in for the graveyard shift. And here is where it gets interesting. The Spanish crew, led by director George Melford, would watch the dailies, the raw footage the Americans shot that morning. They would study exactly what the American director, Todd Browning, did, and then they would conspire to do it better. If Browning put the camera on a tripod and kept it still, the Spanish crew put the camera on a crane and made it fly. If the Americans used flat lighting, the Spanish crew used deep, atmospheric shadows. Critics and film historians now largely agree that the fake Spanish version is technically the superior film. It was also sexier. The American censors were watching the day crew like hawks, ensuring the necklines were high and the violence was minimal. But at 3 a.m., no one was watching. The actress, Lupita Tovar, wore costumes with plunging necklines that would never have passed American censorship. The biting scenes were more passionate. While the Americans were making a stiff stage play, the Spanish crew was making a fluid, Gothic romance. So, why isn't this the version we remember? Because it had one fatal flaw. It didn't have Bela Lugosi. The Spanish lead, Carlos Villarreal, was told to imitate Lugosi, but he lacked the charisma. Without the master's eyes, all the beautiful lighting in the world couldn't save it. It remains a lesson for cinema. You can copy the costume, but you can't copy the soul. Part 3. The Great Silence. Then, the vampire disappeared. From the end of World War II until the late 1950s, Dracula largely vanished from the screen. Why? Because the definition of fear had changed. We had just come out of a global conflict that shattered the world's innocence. The real world had become more horrifying than any movie monster. An aristocrat in a cape didn't seem scary anymore. Audiences shifted to science fiction. They wanted to see giant ants and aliens, monsters created by the atom, not by magic. Dracula seemed like a relic, a dusty antique from a forgotten age. Part 4. The Technicolor Resurrection. It took a British studio to realize that the antique still had teeth. In 1958, Hammer Film Productions released Horror of Dracula, and they did the one thing Universal never dared to do. They used color. For 30 years, vampire blood had been black ink on a gray screen. Safe, abstract. But in Technicolor, blood was bright, arterial red. It was shocking. It was visceral. And they had Christopher Lee. If Lugosi was a magician who talked you into submission, Christopher Lee was a shark. He was 6'5", athletic, and terrifyingly fast. And he was silent. In the sequels, Lee famously refused to speak, claiming the dialogue was so bad he wouldn't say it. But this silence made him even scarier. He became a creature of pure action, a predator who didn't negotiate. He brought the danger back. Part 5. The Year of the Vampire. By the late 70s, the culture had shifted again. We were done with the gritty realism of the 70s. We wanted escapism. We wanted romance. 1979 became known as the Year of the Vampire, with major studios releasing competing Dracula films that showed just how versatile the monster had become. First, you had the charm, love at first bite. George Hamilton played the Count, but he wasn't a monster. He was a relic trying to survive in the disco era. It wasn't just a comedy. It was a commentary on how the old world couldn't fit into the new world. Dracula gets kicked out of his castle by the communist government and moves to New York City, only to find that the modern world is scarier than he is. It was a huge hit because it allowed us to laugh at the archetype, while still loving him. And then, you had the romance, Frank Langella in Dracula. Langella did something revolutionary. He looked at the history of the character and said, no. He refused to wear the fangs. He refused the bloodshot contact lenses. He told the director, I don't want to play a ghoul. I want to play a nobleman. He played Dracula as a lonely, erotic figure. He wanted women in the audience to want to be with him, not to run from him. This was the pivot point. This is the moment Dracula stopped being a creature you kill and started being a creature you save. Part 6. The Operatic Masterpiece. This leads us directly to 1992, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. If the previous films were movies, this was an opera. Coppola decided to film it using only in-camera effects, No CGI, just old school magic tricks, mirrors, and matte paintings. But the real star was the design. Eiko Ishioka, the costume designer, created a visual language that we are still copying today. Look at the red armor Gary Oldman wears in the opening scenes. It looks like flayed muscles. It looks like anatomy without the skin. It symbolizes that this is a character in raw, exposed pain. And Oldman's performance? It was a shape-shifting tour de force. He plays the withered old man, the handsome young prince, the wolf beast, and the bat. He anchored the idea that Dracula is a tragic figure, crossing oceans of time to find his reincarnated love. Part 7. The Action Blockbusters. As we entered the new millennium, the monster had to evolve again to keep up with the pace of modern blockbusters. We got Dracula 2000, which gave us the boldest theological twist in history. Dracula is Judas Iscariot. It explains everything. Why does he hate silver? Because he betrayed Christ for 30 pieces of silver. Why does he fear the cross? Guilt. Why can't he die? Because God denied him the release of suicide. It was a brilliant concept that added weight to the lore. But the real crowd pleaser was Van Helsing in 2004. Critics might have rolled their eyes, but audiences, and especially the internet, loved it. Richard Roxburgh played Dracula like a rock star. He was flamboyant, emotional, and loud. But look closer at his motivation. He wasn't trying to take over the world. He was trying to give life to his children. He was obsessed with his brides. He wasn't their master. He was their frantic husband, screaming at the sky when they were killed. He transformed into a massive, winged hellbeast to fight Hugh Jackman not for power, but for his family. It was pure adrenaline, and it remains a cult favorite because it made vampires fun again. Then came the pivot that divides fans to this day, Dracula Untold. This was the superhero Dracula. Luke Evans played Vlad the Impaler not as a villain, but as a desperate father. The Ottoman Empire is coming for his son. He has no army. He has no hope. So he climbs the mountain and makes a deal with the devil to save his family. He drinks the blood not because he is evil, but because he needs the power to protect his people. It is the ultimate tragic sacrifice. He damns his own soul to save his child. People love this movie because it makes Dracula the good guy. It turns the monster into a martyr. Part 8, The New Love Tale. Finally, we arrive at the present times. A 2025 Luc Besson's Dracula, a love tale. This film is doing something we haven't seen since 1992. It is stripping away the horror to focus entirely on the yearning. Caleb Landry Jones plays the Count, and his performance is being hailed as a masterpiece of body horror mixed with deep romance. He plays a 15th century prince who denounces God after the death of his wife, Elisabetta. But unlike other versions, the focus here is on the love tale. It's almost like Pride and Prejudice with fangs. The visuals are stunning. Besson has created a Gothic Paris that feels like a painting come to life. We see Christoph Waltz stepping into the role of the priest, a Van Helsing figure, bringing that sharp, intellectual gravity that only he can. This film matters because it proves what we have suspected all along. We don't want Dracula to just scare us anymore. We want him to love us. We want the monster who waits 400 years just to see our face again. So, what did we learn from this autopsy? We learned that Dracula is a mirror. In 1922, he was our fear of disease. In 1958, he was our fear of sexuality. In 2014, he was our desire for a protector. And in 2025, he is our desire for a love that transcends death. He is the monster who wears the face we need him to wear. This is Zara Bloom. The story of Dracula doesn't end here. It continues with you. If you could pick the next face of the monster, who would it be? Tell me who you wish to see wear the cape next.